Hey guys, back with a new video, and this one's going to be my top 20 favorite Super Nintendo games of all time. A video I've been wanting to do for quite a while. The Super Nintendo, as I've mentioned before, is my favorite console of all time. I grew up with it. I didn't play as many games back when I was a kid and owned the system as I wanted to. Like, a lot of the games for the Super Nintendo I ended up playing when I discovered emulators back in grade 7 or 8 or so. So I was still pretty young, so I have a lot of nostalgia with the library of games. And I've gotten to the point where I've played all the games I've wanted to play. I think the only ones missing, and they're not going to make an appearance on this list, are games that didn't get a release in North America. So like Terra Enigma, Secret of Mana 2, games like that I just haven't played yet. I am looking forward to playing them, but they're not going to make this list. And with that said, all personal opinion, these are just the 20 games I enjoyed the most. And as always, let me know what some of your favorites are. I think that's about it for this intro. I don't want this video is going to be a two-part video. I don't want to be too long. So from numbers 20 to 11 are going to be in this video. Numbers 10 to 1 are going to be in the next video. So let's just get started with number 20, which is The Great Circus Mystery starring Mickey Mouse. Now I think a lot of people prefer the magical quest of Mickey Mouse. I don't know, I've played it and I like it, but for some strange reason I prefer this one. It's kind of like the sequel to that game in like a trilogy. I think the last one's on Game Boy Advance. Now, this is a game I played when I was a kid, so I do have a lot of nostalgia for it. It's kind of your typical Capcom platformer, but it's a great one. Really detailed graphics, a fantastic soundtrack, and a neat ability switching mechanic where you gain different costumes and you can switch between them on the fly, and they give you new powers. So the level designs are kind of focused around that, where you'll have to use your different abilities to get past different obstacles. The controls are absolutely perfect in this game. I love the controls. The game feels great. It's a bit on the easy side and a bit on the short side, but that makes the game a great game for playing two-player. It's got a two-player mode where you're both on the same screen, which you don't see too many of those types of games. Even on the Super Nintendo, where you can be playing with another player on the same screen, fighting these bosses and going through the levels. And that's the recommended way to play this game. I think this game's kind of gone by unnoticed with Magical Quest being so popular, but out of all the licensed games on the Super Nintendo, this is definitely one of my favorites. At number 19 is Super Metroid. Now, for a lot of people I know, this would be a lot higher up. And with me, I love this game. I think it's got fantastic atmosphere. Like a lot of people mentioned, the music is absolutely amazing. I like how the story, it's not kind of... the story is very kind of vague, but still interesting at the same time. It's one of those games that it was incredibly unique for the time as well. You never saw anything like this. Just a massive world where you can gain different abilities and powers, and it's not completely linear, and you can revisit old areas and find new secrets. There's so much to uncover in this game. It's absolutely insane. My main problems with it arise from the controls, and it is one of those games that it's just... I don't like it as much simply because I'm really bad at it, and you can probably tell from the footage I'm going to put up here that I'm just really lousy at this game. I haven't actually beat it. I got stuck late in the game where I saved with not too much health, and I just can't make any progress, and I got lost so many times with this game. For me, it was a bit hard to figure out where I was supposed to go at times, and there's bombable walls that look the same as any other wall. There was some frustration while I was playing this game, especially in regards to the wall jumping, which I know some people think or say that the wall jumping's fine the way it is, being really strict with its timing. For me, it's just, I don't know, if I take upwards of an hour to learn how to properly wall jump, I feel like that's not great. Other than that, with the controls, I always found myself just struggling with jumping, shooting, and movement in general. I don't know what it was with this game. It just, for some strange reason, to me, it just didn't feel as fluid or as natural as some other platformers on the Super Nintendo. But that said, even with my complaints with the game and the fact that I don't enjoy it as much as a lot of people do, I know a lot of people would say it's their favorite Super Nintendo game. I did enjoy the game enough for it to make this list, and I'm planning to go back to it and starting a new file over, because from what I have played of the game, I really do enjoy it, and it definitely stands as one of the best games on the Super Nintendo. At number 18 is Super Castlevania IV, a game that I played for the first time last October for my October horror gaming marathon. Now, I generally prefer the Metroidvania-style Castlevanias with the RPG elements, but I do still like these traditional Castlevanias. They're incredibly difficult most of the time, and this one's no different, especially towards the end of the game. But with this one, I just had a ton of fun playing it. It's definitely my favorite, actually, like my favorite traditional Castlevania game. You know, I loved the whip, being able to use it in all 8 directions. I thought the level design in this game was absolutely superb. The atmosphere is great, as always. The music is... Man, I love the soundtrack in this game. It's awesome. Really interesting enemy designs here. Really fun bosses. It's just easily one of the best action platformers on the system. Dracula X, I have played briefly. That game is even more brutal. Like that game's like way too hard. Like Super Castlevania IV is difficult, but at least I was able to get through the game. Well, actually, I didn't beat Super Castlevania IV. Like towards the end, it did get way too hard for me. But Dracula X, I can't even beat like the first few levels. Like I think that's supposed to be a port of like a PC Engine game, I think, or something. I'm not too knowledgeable when it comes to Castlevania, but I didn't enjoy that one quite as much, even though the controls in that one felt a bit more fluid. Like, one of my issues with, like, the traditional Castlevania games is, I don't know, the controls have always felt kind of stiff to me, especially when you compare them to, like, the Metroidvania ones, and as far as the Castlevania series goes, Symphony of the Night is always going to be my favorite. That one I just absolutely love, but Super Castlevania IV is definitely no slouch either. Another game like Super Metroid, where I think a lot of people might rank it higher. I definitely enjoyed it, just not as much as some of the other games on my list. At number 17 is King of Dragons, a very underrated beat-em-up for the Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo is known for a lot of beat-em-ups, but this one I rarely see get mentioned. It's a Capcom-developed game. The interesting thing with this one, though, is that there's RPG elements. You choose your character from the beginning, an archer, wizard, warrior, and you can level up your character. They'll get better weapons. The RPG elements are very light. I mean, all you're really doing is upgrading your weapons and, you know, the look of your character every few levels or so, and, you know, gain levels. That's about it. But the beat 'em up mechanics, like the controls, how each character is different from the other, it feels great. The game's very lengthy too. A lot of different stages, a lot of cool boss fights. It's just one of those beat 'em ups that's just really fun. There's not really too much to say about it. It's insanely fun with another player. If you can get another player, and it's just one of those games that was a big surprise when I eventually ended up buying it. It can run for a bit of money if you want to get a cartridge of it. I think it's like $40 to $50, which it's a bit steep, but for how long the game is and if you enjoy beat 'em ups, I think it's really fun. With me, beat 'em ups are weird. Like, I know they get a lot of flack for being repetitive. For me, especially Super Nintendo beat 'em ups, I don't know, I've always found them kind of enjoyable. Maybe it's because I have, like, nostalgia for that genre. They're, like, among my favorite types of games when I was a kid. But I don't know, King of Dragons, I think, holds up really well. And definitely, if you haven't heard of it or haven't played it, definitely check it out. It's very highly recommended. At number 16 is Sunset Riders, an arcade port, and a really great one at that. The Super Nintendo was always known for its fantastic arcade ports. It's basically a Western-themed run-and-gun shooter similar to Contra, with an amazing 2-player mode. Lots of charm and humor to this game. I really love the environments, and how you kind of like shoot enemies. You can kind of shoot in all directions, and you got to watch out for the enemy's bullets, and they like go really slowly. But it kind of makes dodging really fun in this game. Very memorable boss fights in this game. It just oozes with style. It can be a pretty short game, though at the same time, this game is brutally difficult. Even on the easy mode with 2 players, it can get downright hectic towards the end. But it's one of those games that's also starting to kind of rise in price. If you're looking for the cartridge, I think it's like, I want to say like $50 to $60 now. Like, there's a reason why it's that expensive too. It's just a total blast to play. Definitely some of the most fun I've had playing a Super Nintendo. Is it worth that $60 price tag? I mean, if you like Contra style games and you have someone to play with, I'd say definitely. There's just, every time I have a friend over, I always recommend playing Sunset Riders, because it's just, every time you play it, it still remains fun. And I even like it better than Contra 3, which will not be making an appearance on this list. I kind of prefer Sunset Riders, but yeah, a fantastic game. At number 15 is Battletoads and Double Dragon. I've talked about this game before. It's easily my favorite Battletoads game. It's basically a Battletoads game with Double Dragon characters thrown in. But it's a bit different in the sense that this is definitely more of a beat-em-up. It's got some platforming for sure, but compared to like the other Battletoads games, there's not as much of it. It is just kind of your typical beat-em-up, but a very solid one at that. I've never played a beat-em-up with attacks that felt so satisfying. Beating up enemies in this game just feels great. A lot of cool super moves. The bosses in this game are fantastic, very memorable. This is one of those games. It's nostalgic for me for sure. I played it a ton when I was a kid. Never did own it, but I rented it all the time. Like other Battletoads games, this game is brutally difficult. There's a space stage that's completely different from all the other levels, and actually is one of my main complaints with the game, where it's like the controls are like really awkward, and it's like the difficulty is just insane in that level. Usually, if I'm trying to play through the game, that's when I'll die most of the time. And I have beaten this game. It's the only Battletoads game I've been able to beat, but it's just a really fun game with very interesting level designs as well. And it's just that right amount of challenge. It doesn't feel like as cheap or unfair. Well, I wouldn't say the original Battletoads is cheap or unfair. It just requires a lot of memorization. This game, not so much. The music in this game is fucking badass. Like, I love every song in this game. It just gets you pumped up. A very violent game too, especially for like the Super Nintendo. I know this game was also on the NES, but like this game, I found it bizarre where like there's female enemies where like to attack them, you'll like grab them by the back of their hair and like like knee them in the face. Like it's ridiculously brutal. I still kind of question how this game even got past like Nintendo's extreme like censoring system, but man, it's just a blast from start to finish. Even though that space stage is kind of hit and miss with me, I know some people do enjoy it. This game, a terrific two-player mode. Just be sure to turn off I think there's like a two-player mode A and B. One of them you can hit each other. Don't play that. Like that, I don't understand how anyone can get through these games playing the two-player mode like that. I mean, that is just insanely frustrating. The enemies are very aggressive in this game too. From my gameplay footage, you'll notice like I was getting hit like constantly, and the enemies will even hit each other, which makes me laugh. It's a very funny game too. Like the story is absolutely bonkers, but a very underrated game, and by far it's always been my favorite Battletoads game, and definitely one of my favorite beat-em-ups on the Super Nintendo. At number 14 is Super Mario Kart, a game that I think would make a lot of people's lists. Now, I don't think it was the first Mario Kart I played, though. I think the 64 one was the first one I played, but I always find myself going back to this one, even though the graphics are maybe a bit dated compared to later entries, and there's just not too many power-ups. The track design's kind of odd. I don't know, it's definitely a bit dated compared to some of the other Mario Kart games, but it holds up in terms of just pure fun. If you can get another player to play with you, it's a really fun game, and the legacy this game has created. I mean, the Mario Kart series is still like one of the best-selling video game series like of all time. Like it's crazy, like how like it's such a simplistic game like this back in the day had like such a huge following, and now look where we are. I mean, the new Mario Kart Wii U. There's tons of excitement for that, and I'm definitely looking forward to that. And this is where it started. This very kind of simple game, but at the same time, there's not too much like this at the time. I think there's a lot of games even on Super Nintendo that kind of were similar to it afterwards. But yeah, it's just one of those games that there's not really much to say about it, but it's a ton of fun. It's great to see all the tracks in this game kind of make reappearances in later Mario Kart games. Because I like some later entries better, that's why it's a bit lower on this list, even though the influence this game has had on other games is huge, and it's definitely one of Nintendo's most well-known series at this point. My favorite Mario Kart game is the Wii one, actually. Not with the motion controls. I hate using the motion controls with that game, but just playing it with like the standard controllers or just the standard Wiimote. I don't know. That game to me was fantastic. I haven't played any of the handheld Mario Karts. I don't know. For some strange reason, Mario Kart's always been like a console type series for me, but no, this is a great game, and even though some parts of it are a bit dated, it still remains fun to this day. At number 13 is Kirby Superstar. Now this game, I love this game. It's still my favorite Kirby game to this day. Now this game has a lot of nostalgia. I have a lot of nostalgia towards this game. I played it to death when I was a kid. It was one of the few games I actually did own. A very late release on the Super Nintendo. Some people might be partial to Kirby's Dream Land 3. This was always my favorite. A ton of different games that are like their own full games. Like, you've got some mini games in this, but they're actually pretty fun. like the Megaton Punch minigame where you like destroy the entire world basically, but it's just like simple timing based minigames that are 2-player actually. There's like a samurai minigame that's really fun where you have to be like quick on the draw. There's a great 2-player mode with all the minigames in this, or I shouldn't really say minigames, it's basically like, a lot of these are full-fledged games like Milky Way Galaxy, the Great Cave Offensive, which is one of my all-time favorites in this this compilation, where you kind of go around collecting treasures. It's also almost got like a Metroidvania kind of feel in a way. But yeah, just a really fun game. I like how each game in Superstar felt different from the other, where you got your abilities in different ways for each one. Like I mentioned, the 2-player mode was such a blast in this. Like, I played this with my brother, like, all the time. It's, you know, like a lot of Kirby games, it's pretty easy unless you're going for like the boss run. Like, there's a boss run type minigame in here that's actually quite difficult to get through. But you know, it's just one of those games like with almost the entire Kirby series where it's, you know, it's a nice, charming, simple platformer, but it's really fun. The music in this game is fantastic. It's got my favorite soundtrack in any Kirby game. I just love the music in this game. You know, like Meta Knight was such a huge character in this game. Yeah, Kirby Superstar, very, very enjoyable. At number 12 is the 7th Saga, a very underrated game on the Super Nintendo that I never hear anybody talk about. It's widely known to be one of the hardest JRPGs ever made, and I can see that, but it's mainly due to the localization. When they brought the game to North America, they changed a lot of like the numbers, so a lot of the stats were a lot lower. I don't want to go into too much detail with that because there's a lot to explain with that, but basically the North American version is like 100 times harder than the Japanese version. So someday I'd like to, maybe if there's like a translated version of the Japanese game, I'd love to play through that. I know there's even like a kind of like a sequel to this game that never came out in North America that's got a translation that I'd like to play as well. But this game was very nostalgic to me when I was a kid. I played this game to death. I rented it. It might have been one of the first RPGs I've ever played. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I think it might have been. Which is funny because it's known to be one of the hardest. The unique thing with this game, though, and one of the reasons why I love it so much, is right off the bat you choose your own character between like a warrior, a robot, an alien, like some really unique characters in this game, and that's your character, and you're going for like these 7 runes all across the land, and the other characters that you don't choose are a part of the game. They're NPCs that can end up battling you. Sometimes they'll join you, sometimes they can betray you, sometimes they'll steal some of the runes, and it adds a lot of like randomness to the game that I really enjoy, actually. I thought that was really cool back in the day, and I still think it's a really cool idea. The story is basically garbage, but the battle system itself is very fun too. I love it. It's your typical like turn-based battle system, but it's very quick. It's very you know, you see your characters on the screen and the enemies on the screen. Lots of different powers for you to use, and each character, like I said before, plays completely different from another character. So there's a lot of replay value too to the game. You know, it's quite lengthy as well. And if you're looking for a challenge, you'll certainly find that here. But despite that, despite the game being quite difficult and the encounter rate being kind of high, I mean, they give you like this crystal orb where you can see your enemies on the map, but they're just dots. You can technically avoid them, but it's basically impossible anyways. But the dungeons are kind of maze-like and annoying, and the game can be at times a bit too hard for its own good. I still can't believe I was able to beat this game, but it's you know, it's just really fun and very underrated. Definitely one of my favorite RPGs on the Super Nintendo. And at number 11, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4: Turtles in Time. Everyone I know loves this game, unless you hate beat-em-ups, but man, what a fun game this is. Had it as a kid, played it to death. Like I did with the Ninja Turtles games on the NES. I really liked Ninja Turtles when I was a kid, even though it was kind of like past my age. Like at the time I was into them, like they were kind of nobody liked them anymore. It was weird because, you know, I wasn't an 80s kid, I was a 90s kid, so I was into the Ninja Turtles when I shouldn't have been, which is weird. But Turtles in Time, easily the best beat 'em up on the Super Nintendo. The controls are perfect, the soundtrack is killer, you know, the visuals are great. It's an arcade port that actually happens to be better than the original. I don't like the arcade version near as much as this, due to like the added levels in this game. The bosses are really fun to fight. You know, the combat is great. The 2-player mode, So much fun. Me and my brother played this game to death back in the day. About the only complaint I can say about Turtles in Time really is like the difficulty. Even on hard mode, it's really not that difficult. The NES ones, they're ridiculous. This one, not so much, but in a way I kind of enjoy it because it's a short game too. You can just blow through it with a friend really quickly. It's one of those games that, you know, even though it can be kind of repetitive like a lot of beat-em-ups, I still find it fun to this day. Maybe some of that has to do with nostalgia, but I don't know. It's, out of all the beat-em-ups in the Super Nintendo, it's the one I go back to the most, and it's, you know, it's classic, a definite classic. Alright guys, that's it for part 1 of my top 20 Super Nintendo games. I'm going to be recording like this whole thing in one shot, but I'll probably upload the next part in a couple days, so they'll be uploaded from like, I'll upload this one and then a few days later I'll upload the next one. But I am going to be recording this all in one shot, but I hope you enjoyed, and stay tuned for the next part.